The Fall Guy. That's right, folks. Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt have remade a classic 80s television show for the big screen. And man, isn't it the era for just like 80s nostalgia sweeping us up on television and film this year? Because we had Roadhouse very recently too. I guess that's just what we're doing now. We have a couple of big trends in Hollywood of comic book movies falling apart. It's like pick up an IP that we can do something with, or make a musical biopic, or adapt a video game. That's kind of where we're at right now. So I guess somebody owned the rights to The Fall Guy, and they're like, hey, this is kind of popular. We can do something metatextual about it, talk about Hollywood for a minute, the current state of Hollywood, if you will, and do something kind of fun in that aspect. I suppose on paper, if you wanted to redo The Fall Guy, there is something to say. It is a character and a concept that is about a stuntman who's kind of like a bounty hunter or something. So sure, let's do that in the modern context. What would that look like? This movie, I guess. I can't, look, it's The Fall Guy. It's from the 80s. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've seen it or I care about it. It's one of those things that if you asked a young person under the age of 20 if they knew this was based off an original IP from the 80s, they'd say no. How would I have known that? I'm 15. I'm watching this on a TikTok clip where Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt look like they'd rather be doing anything else than having to set up this TikTok promotion. So no, nobody cares about The Fall Guy and all that stuff. So whatever concept you want to take from that basic name and title and story, you can do whatever you want with. Nobody's gonna care. Until they do. Because I'll be honest, when I saw this in the cinema, the primary audience was older people. I'm like, I guess this is a property that a generation likes. Is this a Top Gun? It's not a Top Gun, but it could be something like that. I guess it's more like when they did the A-Team. Do you remember when they like rebooted the A-Team? What are we talking about this for? We got a movie to talk about in front of us. This is from director David Leitch, and he is a director of those guys, and those guys today are like Chad Stahelski and Doug Liman and Christopher McQuarrie. He's the one I like the least. I don't think any of his movies have like an intrinsic style to them that is distinctively his. He is the most journeyman of like our modern day like action directors. And I feel like what he wants to do is more in style to like a joke setup or just like the, well, that just happened humor. Like the style of like, you know, the people in this movie, you're paying to see them, and we're going to film some action around that a little bit. And that's kind of cool. I'm fine with that. I would argue that this is like the least egregious of any of his films, and that's a filmography I've never really loved. But hey, you know, he made it. Like, we have a Fall Guy movie, and it definitely feels like this was, like, the passion project. He started off his career as a stunt coordinator, as a stuntman, and graduates to a director. So him wanting to take that story and talk about it in terms of Hollywood and stuff, I'm kind of for that. Now, I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on, like, the metatextual narrative or, like, the love letter to Hollywood. There have been better love letters to Hollywood in recent time. I also think there have been better love letters to stunt work in recent time than what we've seen here. But there is something to say about Hollywood. This is a movie about Hollywood. It's set in Australia, but it's about Hollywood and like the production of a big budgeted movie these days. So we see the behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not going to pretend I know everything about the behind the scenes of a movie set. I probably know more than like the average moviegoer going into this. But it's fine, you know? Like, I think it looks the part. It gets the part done. No part of me knowing my knowledge about behind the scenes was like, well, this doesn't feel right. I just don't feel that love letter to stunt coordination. There's an appreciation and admiration that is definitely on screen. But to say this is the movie about stunts, it's really not. There are a lot of good stunts in here. Sometimes it feels like we use overly effective visual effects to hide some of those stunts, which is almost worse than that. And we do have multiple cuts of the same sequence in a stunt, so it doesn't feel perfect. If you want to show us a good stunt, and this is just my 2 cents, it could be completely off, maybe have it all in like one take. And that's what I thought we were going to get for a lot of this, because the beginning of this movie, when we're like setting up like, you know, the fun, you know, to and fro, His Girl Friday style jokes being thrown at us, for like the first 15 minutes, we have like a couple of continuous shots that are like over a minute long. And I'm like, oh my goodness, are we doing this? Are we actually going to accomplish this? And then after those moments, it's not that there's like a lot of quick edits. We do have long sequences, but the action sequences, the stunt sequences, they do cut quite a bit. And if we just held on those for a little bit longer, like we've seen in Dead Reckoning or John Wick Chapter 4, or even in Roadhouse, which is a heavily altered digital movie, I feel like it just have a little more oomph than that. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I could see this working for a lot of normal people. Just being like, yeah, this is Hollywood. It's like a love letter. All the promotional stuff and even like the red carpet had a lot of like stunts and stuff. But I think the stunts on the red carpet were more interesting than the stuff we see here. There's a lot of that stuff. I do think Gosling, for the most part, did a lot of his own work in that aspect. But it's a big movie about stunts. You just hope the stunts would feel a little more impactful and leave you with like a thing to think about. Like one big stunt that you'd be thinking about. There might be a couple, like the big car jump or like the barrel roll or the cannon roll or whatever that they do. But it's not enough to make you go, oh yeah, man, like this movie is like the perfect use of like action and cinematography mixed to show you like the benefit of like stunts. And I guess the point of stunts too is that you don't really tell that there's somebody else doing it. So in that way, it is kind of good because you don't think about the stunts more than you do in a normal movie. But if we're doing a movie specifically about stunt performers, maybe you should try to get your audience to think about it a little more. But then again, I don't think David Leitch is a guy who wants to really make you think about stuff for too long. He's more about having fun in the moment. It's more of a romantic comedy than I think it's leaning into, which is kind of interesting. I don't hate that. Like, that is, I guess, what you would do. Because if it's a syndicated television show, you want a love interest. So putting one in a movie, that makes perfect sense. And the chemistry, for the most part, between Gosling and Blunt, there's nothing wrong there. Two actors coming off of Oscar nominations, this kind of being like their big follow-up to those, they do pretty good. I think there's a lot of stuff that you're just expected to believe in terms of like what Hollywood would allow them to be or whatever. But you know, he's the best stunt guy in the business, but he does no more different stunts than anybody else. They just have him do some more crazy stunts. I do kind of respect just like the dry, sarcastic, I'm tired of this all energy that Gosling portrays in this. It's not as like upbeat or like energetic as a lot of his other work. When you look at things like Barbie or The Nice Guys, he's more like just goofy and silly and loud. This is a guy who's tired of it all, which is like a classic David Leitchian lead character. It's fine. He's not bad. Were there points in this film where I'm like, this could be a good Chris Pine thing? Yeah, because I think the more like sad boy is a Chris Pine style lead, but Gosling does good. Emily Blunt goes from a first AD to a director in 18 months. Sure, that's fine. Her characteristics kind of fun. She has probably the best jokes where she stops like literally shooting to like yell at him about like the situation of their relationship, and that's good. Some of the more meta jokes where it's like calling out how terrible this exposition is, or you're the only person that could do this, and I don't know why that is, but that's just the case we have. It's on the nose. It's not bad. There are far worse jokes in the movie than those ones, but there's nothing completely wrong about them. And the music, it's fine. I think it's one of those instances where the music is just so specific to the thing that they are doing, where you could be like, we maybe wrote the sequence around the song that we could use here. They reuse a Kiss song all the time. I Was Made for Loving You is replayed a lot. Did you get that it's a romantic comedy? We're going to use a lot of songs that say love in it. Or like, I'm Good on My Own, and we'll sing a song about that because the guy didn't show up, so I have to be alone now, and we'll have that song play. Overall, this is really not much of anything. It is a very serviceable, very on-the-nose story, and that is going to be something some people like. It has fine action that is no better or no worse than a lot of the pretty decent action movies of the era, and it has some fun to it. It is just kind of nice to see a pretty basic plot for a big movie like this, to like lead us into the summer season, just being uh-oh, the bad guy has a device that could incriminate him and we have to get it back so he can go to prison. That is essentially the last part of this. It's not some over-convoluted plot when it comes to like the final act of this movie, but the more like setting up to the stuff is where it's like, this is a lot. But the final moments, it's not that convoluted, so I kind of appreciate that. For a movie that's supposed to be like a love letter to stunt performers, it really doesn't have anything to say other than, we're here, we're good, you're needed in movies. And yeah, they don't have an Oscar category. We get it. I don't know if calling it out in the movie is going to make anybody feel better or worse about that. But you called it out. Very middling movie about just random events in Hollywood. And again, it's in Australia, so it's not that random about Hollywood. It's not like we're on like some soundstage or in a studio. We're filming on location. So, I don't know. There's just so much about this that could have been better, but at the same time, could it have? This is based on a property that nobody remembers, except for your dad, probably. And your dad, I don't know if he's going to love this movie, but your dad's probably going to like it more than you because, you know, the guy gets the girl in the end. He gets to have fun and be the coolest guy you've ever met. And, you know, there's 80s music, so nostalgia or whatever. I don't know. It's a very weird one. And that's the problem. It's just there's nothing to it. And I know the time of this recording and the time this is going to come out, it is kind of underperforming. It's probably not going to do as well as like anyone was hoping for, which is very strange because you'd only seen positive reactions about the trailer and stuff. But I guess this is just like the state of the industry now. We don't have to go into the state of the industry. But if reviving an old IP that an older generation would like isn't going to get that older generation to come back to cinemas, what's going to save it? What's going to do it? Is it going to be Apes next week? Is it going to be Mad Max? Like, what is it going to be? It's a lot to think about, and I don't think The Fall Guy wants to think about those things. I think it wants you to appreciate the art of film, and to an extent, it does that. But the things that don't do that are a lot of the script problems and romantic problems that this movie has. I don't hate either of these leads. I've liked them better in other stuff. And, you know, as much as I don't think this is like the love letter to stunt performers, I do appreciate that it takes the time to talk about stunts and approach them in a way that makes it very earnest for an audience that doesn't think about that stuff. It's really cool to have that happen. When you listen to other guys do interviews, like McQuarrie in particular, and I even think Stahelski, like they know how to make a better looking movie. And that's just a little bit better than, you know, what if the Deadpool 2 guy talked about, you know, The Fall Guy? It wouldn't look like much of anything. And it's not, which is a shame. It's a shame. It really is. This should be the huge send up to get us to the 2024 summer season of films, but this is a very middling start to what could be a very interesting year for film itself. And we don't have to get into film, but that's just where we are. The movie that should have kicked us off, it's kind of kicking us down a hill. Maybe we're rolling down a huge flight of stairs in one take. So, The Fall Guy, I am going to give a 6 out of 10. Now, thank you all for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And of course, I will catch you in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.